Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a little bit of a different style video. Today I'm going to be talking about the race that just happened at the 2024 Silverstone Grand Prix, and man, oh man, was that one of the best races I've ever seen since I've started following F1. It had everything. It had weather. It had different tire strategies. It had multiple fights for the lead. It had everything. And, had a Lewis Hamilton win, which we will get onto that shortly. But first, let's just start at the very beginning. Let's start at qualifying. Qualifying was pretty good. Wasn't very good for me, with me being a Sergio Perez fan. He was out in Q1, which that's a whole different story. But heading into Q3, it was a three-way battle pretty much from Hamilton, Russell, and Norris, with Verstappen having some floor damage after running wide in, I believe it was Q3. Was it? Maybe Q2. He ran wide into the gravel trap and got some floor damage, so he was kind of out of the running. But, even with that pretty massive damage to the floor, he was still able to put it on the second row of the grid, which, you still have to give that man credit for that, because he definitely put a lap together. But what a way to start off the race weekend, with qualifying having 3 Brits in the top 3 during qualifying for the first time ever at Silverstone. Man, I would love to have been at Silverstone this weekend, but fortunately I was not able to. But with that being said, George Russell started on pole with Lewis Hamilton right alongside him, a Mercedes lockout of the front row. We haven't seen that in a long time, long time. And then Lando Norris brought up third position, and then I believe it was Max and then Piastri. But anyways, as the race got underway, or even before the race got underway, there was still some unknowns in the air. We didn't know if the weather was going to be coming right at the beginning of the race. We didn't know if it was going to be coming halfway through the race. There was still a lot of unknowns that were at play. But once the race got underway, George Russell was able to, hold on to first position, but had a decent amount of, positions being swapped back and forth on lap 1. We saw Norris making moves on Hamilton, or on Verstappen. Even Piastri was getting involved, and then further back, we also saw Alex Albon making some contact with one of the Aston Martins. I believe it was Fernando Alonso. Had a little contact with them, but no one really was able to get out or make any major contact to where they had to come into the pits or so on and so forth. One thing I did forget to mention, Pierre Gasly had a horrific race weekend. He knew he was going to be getting some engine penalties at the race, so he knew he was going to be starting at the back. And on the opening, or not even the opening lap, on the formation lap, they had to retire the car for I believe it was a gearbox issue. So he wasn't even able to, see the green flag wave before his race was already over. So definitely a disappointing race weekend for Alpine and Pierre Gasly. On the other hand, we had Perez starting in the pit lane with that pretty bad qualifying session. He did take some more engine components, which saw him start in the pit lane, and on the hards of all tires to start on, which I get it. At that point, Perez was kind of like a guinea pig for Max, but I would think if Red Bull really wanted Perez to try to get as many points as possible, they would have thrown him on the mediums and just seen what he could have done, see if he could have, picked through the field and so on and so forth. But after the first few laps, Things kind of started to calm down a little bit. Lando was able to catch back up to Max and pass him, as well as Piastri, I believe. Max's pace wasn't quite there. I'm not sure what was really going on. He just didn't seem like he was on the pace, and Russell and Hamilton were pretty much keeping him at bay out front. But then we come to the first small little shower. It wasn't even like a rain shower. It was kind of just a sprinkling of rain to get the track just a little damp, which kind of threw a small wrench into the works. As the rain started to come down, there were mistakes from Russell. We saw Russell make a huge mistake, and Lewis go all the way down to, I think it was like 4th place, which then Hamilton was in the lead to Norris and Piastri. Then Hamilton was making mistakes, and at this point in time, the McLarens looked untouchable. They looked like they were on a different level, a different, pretty much, yeah. In these changing conditions, the McLaren looked absolutely amazing. They were flying to where Lando was able to make a pretty easy move on Lewis Hamilton to lead the Grand Prix. And then it kept raining to where there was possible talks of intermediates. And Ferrari, being good old Ferrari, they have to screw up Leclerc's race. And yeah, when the rain was coming down, it wasn't like heavy rain. It would, like I said, it was just like a small sprinkle where it made the track a little slick. Definitely not really fully entered or pretty much the intermediate tires did not work. And Ferrari and Red Bull both stuck Leclerc and Perez on the intermediates, and my oh my, was that such an awful call. One, Leclerc is not having any luck as of recently. Ever since he won Monaco, his form, his pace, the team, I have no idea what's going on, is just poor. He had that contact at Austria, which got him out of the points, and then this race he just qualified bad, and Ferrari's like, you know what, let's make your weekend even worse and throw you on intermediates when it was still pretty decently dry around the whole track. And then the whole Perez situation. I understand, Perez is a number 2 driver at Red Bull. He is pretty much the guinea pig out of this race, but sticking him on inters when it was hardly there wasn't really even a crossover period, I couldn't wrap my head around that. I understand he's been going through some bad performances again for the second year in a row, but you would think that if you want your second driver to be as confident as possible, that you would make the right calls as a team, And these changing conditions, it kind of comes down to the driver, where either it's intermediate tire or if it's a dry tire. It shouldn't be the team's decision, because they're not the ones out there driving, feeling the conditions, feeling how the cars are reacting to the track, and so on and so forth. So, as of right now, I am not sure if Perez made the call to come into inters or if it was a team decision or what. But that right there, that right there just completely ruined Perez's race as well as Leclerc's. Because, Leclerc was up into the points after the first few laps, with Hülkenberg having a pretty poor start, as well as Albon. And then Perez was making a pretty decent time in positions from the pit lane, but with that first round of pit stops to where they got onto the inters, just completely ruined the race for both of the drivers. I think at the end, Perez was 2 laps down and Leclerc was 2 laps down, and it was just an awful weekend. I'm a huge Checo fan. If you talk to anyone I know, I will be a Checo fan until pretty much until I just stop watching F1, which will be probably never. But it sucks to see that he is at this point in his career where, or just in his form where I don't know where it's at. You know, he starts the season off really strong, and then he just goes away. And, you know, it doesn't help that the team made the wrong call, if they did make the wrong call. But as far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure the team brought him in to be like a guinea pig for Max. Like, oh, let's see if inters will work. Anyways, going back to the race. There was a little shower where, you know, a few people did come in on inters. That was the wrong call, and the track started to dry up pretty fast. And we had a good, it was probably like a good 10, 15 laps-ish, where it was kind of dry racing. But then came a larger cell of rain, and that just threw another major wrench into the works. God, this race was so crazy. I'm trying to have to remember everything. But as the second rain shower intensified, a lot of drivers, I forget what lap it was, but it was where Norris was leading, Piastri was in second, and then came Hamilton and Russell. And on that lap, pretty much everyone came in for inters, which was the right call. You know, it was right at the right moment to come in for intermediates for, you know, those top drivers to get onto wet weather tires. And it sucks for Piastri because he was catching Lando, and he was, you know, looking for the overtake on Lando Norris, and it was they were just too close on track to where McLaren didn't really want to double stack, which I get it. He would have lost time, but the amount of time that Piastri lost doing that extra lap in the wet on the dries is far more than what he would have lost if they double stacked. Because by the time Piastri came into the pits, Lando Norris, that already pitted ahead of Piastri, was getting ready to pass him for the lead as Piastri was coming in. So McLaren definitely dropped the ball on Piastri, and honestly, they dropped the ball for the race win, which we will get onto that shortly. But second rain shower came in. Nothing really crazy happened at that point. I mean, the gaps were staying pretty equal to the top 4 or 5. And if I'm remembering correctly, this is around the time where the man that qualified on pole, had to retire the car, which it is so heartbreaking to see George Russell, you know, in great form over this whole season. You know, he just came off another pole and another win, and he was on pole for his home race. He was looking to, you know, be in the fight for the win, let alone a podium. And it just sounded like, I'm pretty sure it was a like water leak or something, where the car was just losing water pressure. So it was pretty much gonna, if he kept going, the engine was gonna cook itself to where it would have just blown up. So it was a good thing that they did bring him in to save the car, to save the engine. But man, what a heartbreaking thing to have happen at your home race when you're fighting for a possible win in front of your home crowd. But yeah, really sucks for Russell, because he was one of the, I would probably say, 5 drivers that could have won that race. You know, from Russell to Hamilton to Norris to Verstappen. I mean, even Piastri could have been there if McLaren didn't mess up that first round of pit stops. But, excuse me, I'm going to get some water real quick. But yeah, after that, that second rain shower wasn't really that heavy. So the track conditions were kind of at the point where it was too wet for dries, but yet it was too dry for wet tires. So the drivers that were, or everyone was on intermediates, they were overheating, and the tires were just falling apart. I mean, they were pretty much disintegrating. I mean, I remember watching a replay of Verstappen's car, and he was going through, I think, like at the second to last corner or something like that, but you could just see, like in the slow-mo, the tread of the intermediates just flying off every single rotation. So it was very, very difficult conditions to manage for the drivers. I mean, you even saw pretty much there was a few times where Norris made mistakes, Hamilton, pretty much almost everyone was making mistakes and going wide, and very tricky conditions to, get through. But I think, let me think. Sorry, there's just so much that happened in this race that it's hard to remember. But I do believe Norris did make a mistake, and then Hamilton was able to come back to lead the race again. And then the heavens opened, but in a good way. The clouds parted, the brightest rays of sunlight came streaming down onto the track, and it dried the track pretty fast. Since it stopped raining they switched onto the dry tires. I would probably say it was maybe like 5 or 6 laps before it was, full on dry tires. And man, oh man, we saw another round of pit stops that threw everything back into, the bag of what are you going to pull out next, of what's going to happen next. The second round of pit stops, Norris decided to stay out on the inters 1 extra lap compared to Hamilton and Verstappen and, Sainz, so on and so forth. And that extra lap definitely hindered him, as well as when he came in Norris, as well as when he came in for his second stop to put on the soft tires, which we'll talk about that shortly. He pretty much missed his braking point to get into his pit box, and he slid a good 2 or 3 feet extra that the team was not really ready for, and that kind of costed him a good decent 2 to 3 seconds in the pit stop, which then saw him come out behind Lewis Hamilton. And at this point, or I was kind of rewind a little bit before they everyone switched onto the dry tires. Obviously, Norris went 1 lap extra on the wets, but Verstappen came in, put on the hards. Lewis Hamilton came in, put on the softs. And this left Norris and McLaren with the decision of, what do you want to put on next? Do you want to put on the softs? Well, they came across the team radio and pretty much asked Norris, do you want to cover off Hamilton or do you want to cover off Verstappen? And we saw in Austria how fast Norris and McLaren can be with new medium tires. And McLaren did have a new set of medium tires set aside for this very specific reason, to where they could put on the mediums, warm them up pretty fast, and be, very, very, pretty much have extremely well managed pace and be extremely fast in the closing stages of the race. But for some reason, I think Norris made the decision to go on to the softs, because I think at the end of the race, he kind of blamed himself for it, but Norris decided to go on to the softs to possibly hunt down Lewis Hamilton. And at this point, you still didn't know who was going to win. And at this point, it was lap high 30s, low 40s. So you still have a decent amount of the race left, but you still have no idea who's going to win, Lewis Hamilton brought his softs in beautifully to where he didn't have to like push too hard, or he managed the tire very well. And then when Verstappen came out on those brand new hards, he was putting in lap times. He was electrifying. I mean, he was closing the gap to Norris, and then he easily passed Norris, and then he was closing the gap to Hamilton. And to make matters worse on Norris's side, Piastri, his teammate, came in to the pits. I think he came in a lap earlier than Norris to put on the dries, or the same lap. I'm not sure, but Piastri put on the mediums, and Piastri was, he was catching he was just as fast, if not faster, than Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, which were fighting for the win. And in my opinion, if McLaren put those brand new mediums on Norris's car, Norris would have won. Norris would have at least been fighting a lot better, a lot harder, and closing the gap to Hamilton and possibly passing Hamilton and defending from Max Verstappen. But some more water. Give me uno momento. But now we move on to the final 5 laps or so. And when I tell you that I was on the edge of my seat, I was on, I barely had my booty on my seat right there, because oh my Lord, it has been a long time since I got this excited for a race, because even with 5 laps left in the race, you had no idea who was going to win. At this point, Hamilton was just around 3 seconds in the lead from Verstappen. Verstappen already passed Norris, and Verstappen was hunting down Lewis. And I was like, we're going to get a rematch from 2021. This is what we've all been waiting for, because, Mercedes have been on the back foot ever since the new regulations, to where, we haven't been able to see Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, fight out on the track. And man, yeah, this is probably going to be the greatest race of the whole season, in my opinion. But what a crazy, crazy end to the race. I mean, if the race was probably an extra or 1 or 2 more laps longer, I think Verstappen would have gotten Hamilton. But Lewis Hamilton came home and won his home Grand Prix. And keep in mind that this man is 39 years old, going up against quote-unquote kids in their early 20s. This man has not won a race in, I believe it was 2.5 years, ever since 2021. So he's not won a race in 2 seasons. And, struggles with, Mercedes performances being poor, upgrades not working over the past years, to not only lead his home Grand Prix, but win his home Grand Prix and break, I think it's 2 records, to where he's the only driver that has won a race after competing in 300 or more races in F1. And then he has won the British Grand Prix 9 times in his career. And he passed Michael Schumacher of winning, or the most wins at a single circuit. And yeah, I mean, going into the race, I knew this was going to be a race that was not going to disappoint. It had all the factors of, drivers out of position, the possibility of weather, affecting the race, multiple teams looking very strong throughout the weekend. And man, it did not disappoint. like, now that I'm like rethinking about it, I am lost of words. Like, that was one of the greatest races I've seen since I've started watching F1. You know, it wasn't decided by, regulations or track limits or contact or anything like that. It was decided on the track, and the driver that won deserved it the most. I know Lando Norris is kicking himself that he fucked up with the tire strategy. His time will come. He will win a Grand Prix or a British Grand Prix. But just seeing Lewis Hamilton come across the line in his final season with Mercedes that he's been with for years and broken numerous records with, and not having won a race in over 2 years, to do it in front of his home crowd is, I don't think he would want it any other way. This is the last time he was going to be at Silverstone with Mercedes, and what a way to finish it. This race right here is why I love Formula One. And the whole reason why I love Formula One is just the raw emotion you hear after Lewis Hamilton wins this race. He comes on the radio, and you can tell also by Bono, his race engineer, how much it meant for the team. Keep in mind, Russell has won races for Mercedes, but for the longest time, it was Hamilton winning all of these races for Mercedes, and going well over 2 years without a win for Hamilton was unheard of, and coming onto the radio after he crossed the line, hearing Bono just telling Lewis Hamilton, like, get in there, Lewis, like, yeah, everyone was so proud of Lewis. And then Lewis came on the radio himself, and you could hear just the relief, the joy, and just the stress of the past 2 years melt away, and just the raw emotion. And you could tell he was crying, Even, yeah, throughout his in lap, he was waving to his fans. He loves that place, and he loves the sport. And this has been kind of a reawakening of why I love the sport. And man, just seeing how much this win meant for Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, and even, the whole country of Great Britain. Like, it means so much to so many people. And after Hamilton got out of the car, seeing him in his father's arms, like, pretty much bawling his eyes out like a little baby. It shows you how much it meant to him, He wanted that race. He wanted to win that race so badly. And I bet after he saw that he qualified second on the front row, he's like, I have a very good shot of winning this. And man, oh man, did he deserves that win more than anything. I mean, at one point when Verstappen was hunting down Norris, I'm like, Norris, do one for the team and take Max and yourself out. Let Lewis just win this race. And I was praying that Lewis was able to win it, because I joined F1 when Hamilton won pretty much everything. Hearing the get in there, Lewis, and miracles do happen and all that kind of became a normal for me. And I was like, okay, yeah, ooh, Lewis Hamilton won again. But after him being absolutely robbed of a world championship in 2021, and him not winning again for another 2 years, to hear him come on the radio again and just hear the raw emotion for him it's why I love Formula One. It's why I love this sport so much. I mean, it is just that race was crazy. I mean, throughout the whole race, you had no idea who was going to win. I mean, every single lap, throughout the whole race, I would probably say, probably about like 5 to 6 drivers that were in contention of winning the race. You had both Mercedes of Russell and Hamilton. You had both McLarens of Norris and Piastri. You had Verstappen that was, coming through the field. I mean, hell, even Sainz was there. I mean, Sainz kind of had a little bit of a lonely race after he pretty much got dropped by Max. But even, Sainz was there to possibly pick up a win, kind of like Russell did last week at Austria. But man, this race was something else. I mean, this is why I love the sport, And like I said before, Lewis Hamilton deserved that win more than anyone. He's worked his ass off, not only to, stay with the team and, support each other, but just staying mentally and physically fit for the past 2 years. This man is 39 years old. And he's performing like he is in his early 20s. I get out of bed and my fucking back hurts. How is this man, not? I'm lost for words. I mean, this race, all I can say is this race was one of the best races in recent memory. And let's take a moment real quick and look at where Formula One is right now. Formula One is in an amazing place. Coming off of a very extremely dominant year of 2023 where it was Max Verstappen and Red Bull every single race, pretty much. It was pretty much Max and Red Bull were always there, always winning. No one could touch them. To where this year, we are halfway through the season, and we have had, I believe it's six different race winners in 12 rounds. Granted, Max Verstappen is still leading the championship, and he is, extending that points gap. But if you told me at the end of 2023, that we would have 6 different race winners in 12 rounds in the first half of the 2024 season, I would say that is bullshit. And it's not just this race. This whole season has been amazing. Definitely a season that a lot of people weren't really expecting to have. We were expecting Red Bull and Verstappen to dominate again. We were expecting to hear the Dutch national anthem every Sunday. But man, has it been a crazy, crazy race weekend. Or not even weekend, but just season so far. And we're only at half distance. But what an amazing race. I mean, Lewis motherfucking Hamilton just won his home Grand Prix after not winning the race for over 2 years at the ripe age of 39 years old. And that is his, I want to say, 104th race win in total. I'm pretty sure it's 104th. But what a what a way to break that record. And you could just tell when Lewis Hamilton got out of the car, and even like he sat in the car for a second, and you could tell he was just like after the oh crap, what's the word? After like the adrenaline, ended, and he got an adrenaline dump, you could just see by his body language how much this meant to him, to his fans, to the team, to everyone. It was it was something special to watch. You know, I wish I could have been there, but man, that was a race for the history books. You know, it had everything. It had, like I said, it had tire strategy in a way. It had weather. It had multiple race leaders. You know, I'm pretty sure. Well, I know Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Piastri. I don't think Verstappen led any races, but just having like the top 4 or 5 drivers covered by less than like 5 seconds is insane. And like I said, up until the very last lap, we had no idea who was going to win. We didn't know if Norris was going to win. We didn't know if Piastri could have, you know, come back and absolutely destroyed the field. We didn't know if Hamilton was going to hold on. We didn't know if Verstappen was going to surge all the way back through to spoil the party. But man, it is Formula One is in such a good spot right now, and I'm so glad that, you know, like I said, this race. Pardon me. This race has reminded me why I love this sport so much. And even though, it was a very bad race weekend for Sergio Perez yet again, you know, even he's my favorite driver, I still love the sport. I mean, man, what a crazy race weekend. And what a crazy way to end off a triple header. Oh, God, I'm going to want to watch Formula One next Sunday, but I'm not going to be able to, and I'm going to be so upset about it. But man, what a fucking race, dude. It was so good. I'm lost for words. You know, what a great way to just spend 2 hours watching one of the greatest races in recent history. It was... Silverstone does not disappoint. If there is one track that deserves to be on the F1 calendar for years to come, it's Silverstone. Every single year that they go there, it's always something different. It is such a good track. I mean, and you could tell just like the amount of fans that are always there, no matter if it's rain, shine, thunderstorm, whatever. They will sit there. They will pack that grandstand and watch these drivers, these 20 drivers, the 20 best drivers in the world, go to war pretty much and duke it out lap after lap after lap after lap. And it doesn't matter if it's a Brit winning or not. They love the sport. But yeah, there's my thoughts on the British Grand Prix. I mean, this is a little bit of a different type of video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. I kind of maybe want to kind of get back or get into this type of, you know, race review every race weekend, but we'll see. But man, I had to have I had to get my voice out there and just say what an amazing race weekend. I mean, everything, you know, even practice was amazing, to qualifying, to the race, to the very last lap. It was one of the greatest race weekends I have watched or followed. But man, when Formula One pulls up to an event to cook, Formula One not only cooks, they cook you a 4-course meal that you want to eat every single crumb of it, or you're afraid that you're going to miss something. I mean, when I say I was glued to the TV, I was glued to the TV that whole race. You know, I did not have my phone in my hand. I wasn't, you know, scrolling through Instagram or Twitter or whatever. I was glued to the TV, and if only Formula One could be that way every single weekend, But if it was that way every single weekend, we would become numb to it. We wouldn't have these amazing races like we just had. But yeah, what an amazing! I know I keep going on. All in all, the whole race weekend, 10 out of 10. I would sit through and watch that race again over and over and over if I had to. But those are my thoughts on the race weekend of the 2024 British Grand Prix. Last thing I'm going to say, I hope you guys did enjoy this a little bit. Like I said, I may want to start doing this a little bit more to see how it feels and so on and so forth. But my final thoughts on the race: Lewis motherfucking Hamilton has finally won a race in F1 again. And he has won it in one of the greatest ways possible, to be in front of his home crowd and his fans with a team that he has broken so many records with. What a great way to, close out the Mercedes and Hamilton partnership. At least winning one more race with them. But there you guys have it. That is my verbal vomit of the race. I hope you guys did enjoy. And let me know what you guys think about this kind of race review / podcast in a way. And I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day.